The wind howled through the jagged peaks of the Eldon Mountains, carrying the scent of pine, earth, and the faintest tang of blood. Snow clung stubbornly to the crags, glittering like fractured glass in the pale moonlight. From the highest ridge, the valley below seemed almost peaceful, but those who knew the land understood that peace in the Alpha King's domain was a fragile illusion. In the shadow of the ancient cliffs, a roar shattered the silence, a sound that could make even the bravest warriors tremble. From the obsidian caverns of the mountains emerged a dragon, its scales like molten silver, eyes burning amber with an intelligence that seemed almost human. The dragon, known as Valor, had refused every warrior who had dared approach the Alpha King's throne. For centuries, only the king himself could ride it, asserting his dominance over the pack and the mountains alike. Today, the ceremonial ground shimmered with anticipation. The Alpha King, a colossal figure whose presence radiated authority, stood at the center. His fur was as dark as midnight, his eyes piercing like storm clouds ready to strike. Around him, the strongest warriors of the realm formed a silent circle, their breaths fogging in the cold air. "None of you will succeed," the Alpha King said, his voice deep and unyielding. "The dragon serves only me. Those who try will fail, and their pride will shatter." The warriors nodded grimly. They had heard the tales how the dragon could sense weakness, greed, or fear. Many had tried and been thrown to the jagged rocks below, never to rise again. And yet, in the corner of the clearing, she waited. She was a quiet figure, almost invisible in her simple, threadbare cloak. Lyra, the Maid of the Kingdom, had no titles, no renown, and no warrior's skill, or so everyone thought. Her hands were calloused from endless chores, her eyes bright with an inner fire that no one had seen before. She did not step forward immediately. She simply watched, her heartbeat steady, her gaze fixed on Valor. The Alpha King's brow furrowed. "What is she doing here?" he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. The warriors stiffened, ready to object. A maid had no right to stand among them, much less approach the dragon. But Valor's massive head tilted, as if it recognized something familiar in Lyra. The air between them seemed to hum with an invisible energy, a pulse that resonated in the bones of everyone present. Lyra took a single step forward. The snow crunched beneath her boots, loud in the oppressive silence. She extended her hand slowly, not with the arrogance of a warrior, but with the calm certainty of someone who knew she belonged. "Do you fear me?" she whispered almost to herself. The dragon's eyes softened, and it lowered its massive body, folding its wings around itself like a protective cloak. The wind stilled. Even the Alpha King, who had faced countless battles and blood-soaked nights, felt a ripple of awe. "No one," he began, but Lyra's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. The silence stretched infinite intense, until finally, the Alpha King stepped back. His warriors froze, unsure whether to intervene. With a graceful motion, Lyra approached Valor. Her hands brushed the dragon's scales, cool yet alive, and the dragon nudged her gently, a sound somewhere between a growl and a purr. "I am not a warrior," Lyra said softly, "but I am not afraid," and in that instant the impossible happened. Valor bowed its massive head, lowering it completely to allow her to climb onto its back. The gathered warriors gasped. The Alpha King's eyes blazed not with anger, but with a shock that bordered on disbelief. Lyra looked down at him, a hint of a smile on her lips. "The dragon chooses who it serves," she murmured. And with that she rose into the sky atop the dragon that no warrior had ever conquered, leaving behind the cold ground, the astonished warriors, and the Alpha King himself, whose heart thudded in a rhythm unfamiliar and unsettling. Something had shifted in the kingdom that night. Something that would change everything the Alpha King thought he knew about power, destiny, and the quiet maid who dared to challenge it. The cold mountain air whipped past Lyra's face as she clung to Valor's silvery scales. The wind tugged at her cloak, but she felt no fear, only exhilaration. The dragon's wings beat with the rhythm of the storm, each powerful thrust carrying her higher above the jagged peaks. Below, the forests and villages of the kingdom looked like tiny toys, insignificant in comparison to the sky around them. Back on the ground, the Alpha King Kael stood frozen, his massive frame tense. His storm, gray eyes followed the ascent of Lyra and the dragon, a conflict of emotions roiling within him. Pride, disbelief, and a strange, unfamiliar pull twisted together in a knot in his chest. "She's just a maid," growled one of the warriors beside him. "She cannot." Kael silenced him with a single icy glance. "Do not speak," he commanded. Even his own voice sounded strange to his ears, rougher somehow, as if acknowledging a truth he could not yet name. Meanwhile, Lyra guided Valor toward the floating cliffs above the northern ridge, where the ancient runes of the Elder Pack were carved into the stone. She had come not by choice, but by instinct, drawn to the power that had slept in the mountains for centuries. Her fingertips brushed the runes, feeling the faint hum of ancient magic beneath her skin. "You can feel it, can't you?" she murmured to Valor. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter, and it let out a low rumble that vibrated through her bones. It was as if the dragon was confirming her thought. Power recognizes those who are worthy, not those who are expected. And somewhere below, Kael felt it too. A subtle tremor ran through the earth, a pulse that spoke to him in a language older than words. He gritted his teeth. The kingdom had never bowed to anyone but him, and yet Lyra had somehow tapped into a force even he could not control. That evening, as night fell like velvet over the mountains, Lyra returned with Valor to the ceremonial grounds. The snow had melted into rivulets of ice, and the warriors had gathered again, their whispers filled with awe and fear. No one had ever dared approach Valor, and yet she returned, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence that radiated in every gesture. Kael stepped forward, his dark fur gleaming in the torchlight. "You have no right to command my dragon," he said, voice low and dangerous. His eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of something he refused to name. Curiosity, fascination. Lyra did not flinch. "It does not belong to anyone," she said calmly. "It belongs to those who earn its trust, and I did not demand it. It chose me." The Alpha King's jaw tightened. For decades, he had been the undisputed ruler of the Elden Mountains. No one had ever dared challenge his authority until now. And yet, he could not deny the strange pull he felt toward her, a magnetic force that left him unsettled and intrigued. "I will test your resolve," he said finally, his voice carrying across the clearing. "If you truly wish to prove yourself, you will come with me to the heart of the wild." Lyra tilted her head, intrigued. "The heart of the wild?" she asked softly. Kael's eyes darkened. "A place where only the strongest survive. If you can endure it, you may yet prove that the dragon chose wisely." Valor shifted beside her, sensing Kael's tension. Lyra's hand instinctively rested on the dragon's scaled neck. She did not fear the challenge, but she could sense that Kael himself was both protector and danger, a storm wrapped in flesh and fur. The warriors watched in stunned silence as Lyra and Kael prepared for the journey, tension crackling in the frozen air. The Alpha King had faced countless battles, conquered enemies, and tamed the fiercest creatures, but none of that had prepared him for the quiet maid who stirred his heart with a single glance. As the first light of dawn painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Lyra mounted Valor once more with Kael beside her, a tension, laden alliance forming between them. The journey ahead was perilous, the heart of the wild unforgiving, but neither of them could ignore the spark igniting between them. A dangerous, thrilling fire neither knew how to control. The wind had become a living thing, whipping against their faces as Lyra clung to Valor's scaled back. Kael rode beside her, his muscles taut, every movement controlled and precise. The mountains ahead rose like jagged teeth, black and imposing against the storm, darkened sky. This was no ordinary path, it was the fabled heart of the wild, a place where magic and danger intertwined, and only the worthy could survive. Valor's wings cut through the storm with effortless strength, but even the dragon's powerful body was tested as the clouds churned violently. Bolts of lightning split the sky, illuminating the snow, covered peaks in brief, blinding flashes. Lyra's grip tightened instinctively, but she did not flinch. Her calmness was like a tether for Valor, a quiet certainty that steadied the dragon against the raging tempest. Kael's sharp gaze never left her. He had faced armies, tamed beasts, and ruled a kingdom with an iron claw, but Lyra was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. She was not afraid, and yet there was a softness to her courage that unsettled him, drew him closer even as he fought the magnetic pull she exerted over his mind and body. "You move as though you belong here," Kael said, voice low and carrying over the wind. "Most would falter, most would beg to turn back. I follow where I am needed." Lyra replied softly, not looking at him. Her eyes were on the storm, on the dark peaks that hid secrets older than the mountains themselves. "And I trust those who guide me." Kael's chest tightened. Was that a subtle challenge, or merely her quiet assertion of independence? Either way, he had no answer, and that both frustrated and intrigued him. Suddenly, the storm's roar grew louder, more violent, and a shadow passed beneath them. A massive shape, furred and scaled, streaked across the clouds. A guardian of the heart of the wild, a creature born of legend. Its eyes glowed crimson, and it let out a roar that shook the mountains. Valor growled, the sound deep and resonant, vibrating through Lyra's bones. He veered sharply, dodging the creature's lightning-tinged claws, and Lyra felt the surge of the dragon's power beneath her hands. She whispered soothingly to Valor, and the dragon responded, twisting in the air with graceful precision that belied its massive size. Kael tightened his grip, leaning close to Lyra as they maneuvered through the storm. "Do not trust the storm alone," he shouted over the roar. "Trust me." For a brief moment their eyes met, and in that glance a spark ignited. It was not just adrenaline or fear, it was recognition. Two powerful forces, equal in strength, tested by circumstance and drawn inexplicably to one another. Valor dove through a narrow chasm, the wind screaming past them, and they emerged into a calm valley, surprisingly untouched by the storm. Here, the heart of the wild revealed itself, a sprawling expanse of ancient ruins, runes glowing faintly along jagged stones, and a river of molten crystal that twisted like living fire. Magic hummed in the air, thick and potent, a force that tested their very souls. Lyra's eyes widened. This is more than I imagined," she whispered. Kael dismounted, landing gracefully on the crystalline ground. He turned to her, dark eyes glittering in the otherworldly light. "Most would never survive it," he said. "And yet here you are, unafraid, calm. How can that be?" Lyra met his gaze steadily. "I do not fear what I cannot control," she replied. "I trust what I can." Kael's heart thudded painfully in his chest. She spoke with a clarity and power that belied her quiet demeanor. And yet beneath it, he sensed a vulnerability, an innocence wrapped in strength that made him ache to protect her, even as he felt an irresistible desire to test the limits of that trust. Before he could respond, the ground trembled. From the molten river rose a figure, forged of fire and shadow, eyes burning like twin suns. It was a guardian spirit of the heart of the wild, ancient and wrathful, and it let out a roar that shook the very mountains. Valor reared, wings spreading wide, and Lyra pressed close to his neck. Kael's hands found hers instinctively, guiding her in a stance of readiness. The storm of magic, fire, and shadow descended upon them, and for the first time, Lyra and Kael fought side by side, not as Alpha King and Maid, not as dragon rider and warrior, but as two hearts entwined in the crucible of danger. The molten crystal river hissed and bubbled as the guardian of the heart of the wild advanced, its massive form shifting between fire and shadow. Each step it took sent tremors through the ground, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with its fury. Lyra's fingers tightened on Valor's scales, her knuckles whitening. She could feel the dragon tense beneath her, muscles coiled like springs, ready to strike. Kael's eyes never left the guardian. His stance was firm, powerful, commanding, but there was a flicker of something in his gaze he could not name, something that went beyond strategy or pride. It was Lyra, quiet and unyielding, radiating a strength he had never known could exist in someone so seemingly fragile. "Valor now," Lyra commanded, voice steady despite the storm of heat and shadow that approached. The dragon responded instantly, twisting midair and letting out a roar that shook the very cliffs around them. Flames licked the air, and molten sparks rained down like shards of glowing glass. Kael leapt from the ground, landing beside Lyra on Valor's back. For a moment their eyes met, dark, stormy, and raw with unspoken tension. "Hold on," he said, his voice a low rumble. Lyra nodded, but did not speak. She could feel the connection between them, fragile but undeniable, like lightning stretching across the sky, waiting to ignite. The Guardian lunged, claws of shadow and fire reaching for them. Valor twisted, dodging with impossible grace, and Lyra pressed her forehead to his scaled neck, whispering a calming rhythm only he could understand. "You trust me?" Kael asked, his voice low, almost intimate. Lyra's lips curved slightly. "I trust us," she replied. Her words were like a spark, small but potent, and Kael felt it ignite something he had spent a lifetime suppressing. Together, they guided Valor into a synchronized attack, diving and twisting in the air. Lyra's hands moved with quiet precision over the dragon's neck, directing its power, while Kael's voice barked commands, sharp and authoritative. They became a single force of fire and flight, a perfect harmony of skill, trust, and instinct. The Guardian roared, shaking the air with its fury. It lashed out, but Valor's wings carried them out of harm's way, spiraling high above the molten river. Lyra glanced down and saw the Guardian's flames reflected in Kael's storm, gray eyes, and in that reflection, she saw something unexpected, concern, awe, and something more. The battle raged, fierce and unforgiving, but with each maneuver, Kael began to notice her bravery not as a threat to his authority, but as a revelation. She was not a maid in the shadows. She was a force that demanded acknowledgement, respect, and something deeper. Finally, with a coordinated strike, Lyra pressed Valor's claw against a glowing rune of the heart. The Guardian let out a final, anguished roar, dissolving into a cloud of embers and shadow. The river of molten crystal stilled, the air calmed, and the first rays of dawn pierced the storm-clouded sky. Lyra slid from Valor's back, landing lightly on the crystalline ground. Kael was beside her almost immediately, his hand brushing hers, a fleeting, electric touch that neither could ignore. His chest heaved, his pulse racing in a way it hadn't in years. "You were magnificent," he admitted, voice low, almost vulnerable. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with something he could not name. "You trusted me," she whispered, her tone both a statement and a question. Kael's hand lingered near hers, hesitant. The storm of the heart of the wild had tested them, pushed them to the brink of fear and survival, and yet he realized the truth. His fascination with her was no longer mere curiosity. It was obsession, need, and admiration intertwined. Valor let out a low, approving rumble, nudging them together. The dragon's loyalty, once solely to the Alpha King, now encompassed the quiet maid who had tamed him without a sword or shield, only with courage, trust, and an unyielding heart. Kael's voice was rough with emotion. "I do not know if I can protect you from the world, or even from myself," he admitted, his eyes dark and raw. "But I want to try." Lyra's lips curved into a small, radiant smile. "Then we will face it together," she said. And in the glow of the heart of the wild, the first sparks of their bond ignited fiery, unshakable, and utterly undeniable.